Bhotani ndiyazibulisela kuni nto zakuthi. Abamnyama nabamhlophe ngokulinganayo. Ndithi mna ndinguNandi Jola, intombi yomXhosa. Ndizonibalisela amabali ngale mini ibaluleke kangaka, i-Africa Day. Hello everyone, my name is Nandi Jola. I am a storyteller and a poet, and I am here to celebrate Africa Day with County Cork Council, Library and Art Services. I'm originally from Port Elizabeth in South Africa, which is now known as eGqeberha. My language is isiXhosa. However, I'm going to open up with my poem, An African Soul. An African child strives in the sun. Her hair is like silk. Her skin is the most beautiful treasure. She is majestic, tall. Her teeth are so white, and she is a poem, the poem in the Song of Solomon. This is the poem that is in my upcoming debut collection that is going to be published in the summer of 2022. So today I am going to tell a couple of stories. I want to start with the most beautiful story about a little girl called Ketiwe. Ketiwe growing up hearing the words no, no and no. No girl shall play imbira. In those days, imbira, the thumb piano, was only played by men and boys. It was the most sacred of the most sacred instruments in Africa. Its purpose was to call upon the spirits of the ancestors. For example, if someone was ill, or if there was a celebration, a birth, imbira was played to bring in the ancestors. So every time Ketiwe asked, the father would say, no girl, no woman has ever played imbira. But of course, girls and women could dance. For example, they could accompany imbira with the music, the song, when they are dancing and they are playing. That's how women got involved with imbira, but have never touched it. Oh, Ketiwe wanted to play imbira with all her heart. As a girl, she had chores, household chores. She had to go and fetch water, for example, from the river. After she had finished cleaning the house, and when she came back from school, she had more chores to do. But in the evening time, what we call kwaXhosa bantu bahle, when the sun is setting, it was a beautiful time because that was the time to sit around the dinner table and enjoy music and start playing and telling stories. Ke bantwana bam, ndingaphuma intsomi emini, ndingaphuma impondo kutshiwo. So Ketiwe grew up knowing the songs and the sounds of imbira, even though she had never played one herself. In Xhosa, we have what we call the harvest season. I know even in Ireland, we have the harvest season. When the crops are all ready, harvested, there would be a celebration thanking the ancestors and the gods for a beautiful crop. Everybody would bring their baskets and they will all share with their neighbors. But there was something different this year. Word came around that the king wasn't well, but the villagers were determined to go about their business. Ketiwe this one day went to the river. What time? Yes, you guessed it right. That's the best time because in Africa the sun is so hot. The skin will be basking in the heat all day. When the sun is setting, that is the perfect time to go in for a dip. As Ketiwe was going, singing her songs, Ezongithola ngihlele emlanje eni uzongithola ngihlele emlanjeni usuka lami. She noticed that this day the river was still, but she could see the ripples as she was coming closer and closer and looking. And there she noticed there was a hand. The hand was coming out to her. It was dripping with water, but it had something beautiful, and it was giving it to her. Of course, she was startled at first, but then she took, because what she could say, it was the most beautiful imbira that she's ever seen. The joy. Her heart was pounding. Of course, she couldn't bring this imbira home, so she thought she had to hide it. So she found a spot where she could hide it. It was in a cave, the cave that the girls usually went in. But as soon as she went deeper into the cave, there was a little spot. She hid it there. She thought nobody would find it there. But before she went back home, she just wanted to play a tune or two. Oh, if you've ever touched imbira, you would know that it is made out of metal and it's hard. And for a little girl like Ketiwe, who has never played imbira, as she was trying, oh, her little hands were sore. She was getting more frustrated, and then she said to herself, maybe Dad was right. This imbira thing is not for little girls and women, because we are weak. But then she thought to herself, if I don't give myself another chance, then I would have been defeated before I even tried. So every day, Ketiwe after school, when she had finished her chores, she couldn't wait to go and play imbira. And of course, where she was tucked inside the cave, no one could hear. And she practiced, and in no time she was playing it beautifully. She was so excited, but there was only one problem still. She still couldn't share this news with no one. On this day, news came that the king was really on his last days, if not hours. The whole village was saddened. Word spread that even the harvest was cancelled because there was no way they could be celebrating with homemade beer umbut when the king was not well. They tried everything. They called in the king's men. The king's men came and played. They asked all the men to play the imbira, to bring the spirits of the ancestors to see if there was anything that could be done for the king. All the men came, but nothing. Nothing could get the spirits of the king up. Ketiwe just ran. She just ran and went into the cave and took her imbira out and started playing. She started playing as she was walking up to the village, passing women, passing other girls. They were all astonished. First of all, the women were saying, "Hey wena, uzohlola apha, akekho umntwana wakho wayidlala lento intombazana," thinking that she was bad omen. But Ketiwe didn't mind them. On she went. She even went into the palace itself. And of course, by this time, anything at all to help the king. The men were so weak with grief that Ketiwe just went past the guards without even a hustle, playing. She sat beside the king and she closed her eyes and she started playing. They noticed something. The eyes started opening, and then the king was sitting up. Oh, he was loving the music, but most importantly, he was connecting to the people. His ancestors were in the room. And before you know it, Ketiwe had spared the king's life. When the king was up on his feet again, he ordered that the celebrations continued. Harvest continued. So the villagers went about to make the beer, what we call umboti. And the girls were practicing, the women were practicing their dances. Oh, it was going to be a beautiful day. And the day itself came. The king had slaughtered the cows. The villagers had brought in baskets. And the women were singing, hey! The king was well again. But the king said in his speech that it was for the little girl that his life was spared. Ketiwe. So from that day, he decreed that Imbira will be played by women and girls. And Ketiwe was honored for her bravery. Hostose iyaphela apho eyami intsomi bantwana bam, and there I end my story. I hope you enjoyed that story. And the next story now I'm going to tell is one of Lungile. Oh, Lungile was the most beautiful, the most humble girl in her village. All the elder women said that this child was going far, going places. She was the type of a girl who would help anyone, children, elderly. She was seen amongst the sick. She was always there to help. All the girls in the village sometimes were a bit jealous, but they loved Lungile because Lungile loved everyone. So as the girls were growing up, they were going to the river. And there's a tradition when a girl reaches a certain age that the boys would start looking and go and ask for a hand in marriage. So the girls in the village, one by one, they were asked for their hand in marriage. Of course, knocks came to Lungile's house. The suitors would come one by one, but Lungile said, not Luna Baba. Her father said, Lungile, are you sure? First it was the king, son, a prince from the neighboring village. Oh, he had brought his wealth to show off for sure. His entourage could be seen entering the village, and everybody was wondering, who is this coming out of this beautiful car? He had his feathers. He was wearing his crocodile shoes. Oh, the beads, everything you could think of that is a regal. But not to Lungile. Lungile was not easily impressed by material things. She wanted somebody who was kind in their heart. That was the sort of person that was going to steal her heart. So he was sent away together with his entourage and his gifts. Lungile said, hey, Koda Baba, not this one. Lungile's father sat Lungile down and said, Lungile, you do realize that I am getting old, and I would love to see my grandchildren before I am no longer on this earth. Lungile said, Yebo, Baba. Yes, father. Ngiyakuzwa, I hear you. Ndizomazi xa efikile ndizombona. I will know from the kindness of his heart. So Lungile's father was okay. We'll give this a chance. Another young man came all the way from Ireland. It was said he was a scholar, and he was saying all these things that he was going to bring Lungile to Ireland, and there things were beautiful and the lights were shining, but Lungile was not even impressed by that. So again, it was a no. Another young man from the village came. This one was just a shoemaker, a humble man who had grown up in front of Lungile, so they knew one another. And Lungile said, I know you are humble, but I want a beautiful heart. So that was a no. So the women in the village were making fun now of Lungile and saying, this one, akasozendelo. She will never get married, this one. She's too fussy. By this time, other girls were married. But Lungile was not worried. Lo and behold, one day Lungile was sleeping and she heard a bird. Lungile, Lungile, yamlanjani. Lungile, Lungile, go by the river. And she got up and she ran by the river. And when she got there, she saw this beautiful, handsome man feeding the birds. He was surrounded by the most beautiful birds with beautiful plumage. The greens, the yellows, the peacocks, all sorts of birds. When he turned round to look at Lungile, their eyes locked. From that day on, them two couldn't be separated. Therefore, word got around the village that Lungile had found her perfect husband. Oh yes, she had. So arrangements were in order then to make her a wedding dress. So the birds, they each dropped a feather for the wedding dress. So she had the most beautiful dress made from feathers of each bird. It was the most beautiful dress that no one has ever seen. When the day itself came, the festivities, Lungile's father ordered that 20 cattle be slaughtered. And everyone was going to have a celebration of their time. I don't know about you here in Ireland, but in Africa, when we start a celebration, it goes on and on and on. And so this one did. The women were singing, the children were dancing. It was a week-long celebration. And by the time Lungile had to move from her village to her new village now, where she was going to be the new wife, the entourage, the music, the drums, hey! All the women, the children, and the men were sending her off. It was a beautiful send-off. And Lungile's father was only glad that he had trusted Lungile with this one, because she had found the person with best heart. And here I end my story. I'm going to finish off with a very, very short story. And this one, really, I'm going to tell it to you as it is. So, this one is about Ngateko. Ngateko in his dream. A king wanted something for his 50th anniversary to his wife. So he ordered all the craftsmen to make something except for Ngateko, because the king has never really ordered anything from him. He was just a poor man that maybe fixed the odd broken maybe horseshoe, or he made a gate for a very maybe old man in the village. So he didn't really have a reputation. So the king said he had a dream, and if anybody, a locksmith, can interpret that and make something beautiful for his wife, then that would be the person that would be honored. So men came, the best craftsmen came, and the king was not happy. Instead, he was crying because no one got it right. So he tried all of them except from Ngateko. So Ngateko was ordered to go because he was the only person who was not tried. So the king explained to him. Now at this stage the king was getting angry because it was getting closer to the time and no one could interpret what he was talking about. Ngateko said, I think I have it. Said the king. Okay. So he said, if you give me a couple of days, I will go and I will make you the most beautiful piece of art that I think will interpret this dream of yours. Away he went, Gateko. When he got home, he thought to himself, what have I got myself into? He tried to think like the king. He tried to put himself in the king's shoes. But then he thought, no, if all the trusted craftsmen couldn't come up with something, then who am I to come up with anything? So he went back to the king after a day or two, and the king was anxiously wanting to see, what is it? What is it? Let me see. But he said to the king, first of all, to make this beautiful piece of art, I am going to need 50 liters of tears. Laughed the king. At this stage, he couldn't cry. He had already cried. So he ordered the villagers to cry. So everybody in the village was crying. But they couldn't fill up 50 liters. So it was impossible. So the king had to go to Nkateko and tell him that it is impossible to have 50 liters of tears. Nkateko turned round and said, it is impossible for me to make something from your dream, because what you have demonstrated to me is that art is difficult, but it is more difficult when you have to interpret somebody else's dream. So the king thought that Nkateko was the most intelligent one, because out of all the craftsmen, he's the only one that has come up with a very clever answer indeed. So the king accepted whatever Nkateko made, which was a beautiful necklace, by the way. And the king honored him the best craftsman of all time. Not only was he honest, but he had a solution. So, I rest my stories. There, I hope you enjoyed all my stories. My name again is Nandi Jola. Happy Africa Day.